What does it mean to explore your roots? To take a deeper look at where your parents' histories began and where your own history began. Growing up far, far away from this little island encompassed by the Atlantic, I only ever had a romantic idea of what it would look like to see this place that was so deeply rooted in the reasoning behind my existence. And what does it mean to have a romantic viewing of a place where you've never visited before, if not for it only having existed in your dreams, in visual imagery created by storytelling and family photos and whatever information you can muster up on the internet? Not having any true experiences rooted in reality, this little island off the coast of eastern Canada was but a faraway land just as surreal as any other from the worlds of fairy tales and children's stories. But what is Newfoundland if not a world of fairy tales and children's stories? In my few short days on the island, even with stops at cemeteries and fire stations to meet family members gathering to celebrate those that we've lost in recent years, I was still able to feel the fertility of compassion and kindness, of ease and simplicity, greeting me from places as random as the gas stations to gentle volunteers, volunteering time at a salmon conservation area to tell me about the magnetic abilities of the beloved fish to travel to their homeland, reproduce, and unlike other salmon species of the Pacific, return to the sea that they wander until time to return again for the next mating season. Myself being my own version of these Atlantic salmon, coming home, not knowing why, not knowing how, if but only due to the existence of those little scales telling me it is time to make a move, to find out what comes next, to leave behind the familiar in order to grow. Sitting next to me on the plane, heading to Deer Lake, a small town on the western end of the island, known for being the gateway to outdoor adventures, was a gentle older man sitting in between me and his silent, endearing wife at the window seat. It seemed the whole time that this fellow wanted to talk to me, and he reminded me so much of my own grandfather, wanting to talk to friendly faces and learn about the people he found himself in the company of, that I didn't have much of a choice but to put down my book and hear him and tell him about my reason for traveling to his homeland. I asked him, how did he feel about other parts of Canada? He said, well, I can tell you, it's not Newfoundland. He wanted to talk about the silver foxes that have only recently been seen on the island that must have crossed over on the ice during the winter season. He told me I shouldn't drive in the evening, it would be too dangerous, posing a risk I may run over a moose, or more likely a moose may run over me. I asked him about the birds, the fishes, all the creatures I would find.
That's what we'll be listening.
At the same time, he reminded me of my family that raised me down in Louisiana. He made me feel closer to my grandmother, who was born and grew up on an island in a little town called Grand Falls. Having passed away while I was overseas and falling ill before I could make it up to see her and say my goodbyes, sitting next to this sweet soul from the island made me feel closer to my grandmother than I've been in a long while. And seeing the mountains felt like another coming of home, seeing them after such a long pause since leaving Montana 2 years ago. And for those that wonder if the rugged mountains of the East could compete with those of the West, well, I argue it's simply not a competition, for both have their own sets of souls and spirits, and both fill in part of your own curiosity and thirst for adventure in unique ways. From visiting places like Gross Moor National Park to kayaking on smooth surfaces of Deer Lake, water, mountains, and spirit felt closer than ever, and it really did feel like a little tablespoon dosage of home, whatever that means and wherever that may be. As I continue to seek what it means to feel settled in my environment, compensating with my instinctual desire to be a better person, to live in a place that fuels my need for adventure, all while being able to access that important sense of community that allows me to feel grounded, during troubling times. I'm grateful to know that there are people out there and places to see that have arms just as widely open as those of a mother. Visiting Newfoundland and traveling in general reminds me that people are truly worth fighting for, and in every single way possible, worth living for. I've failed to see many times throughout recent years how this could all amount to something bigger than I can imagine, living now in times of uncertainty and scarcity of resources and energy. Experiences like this help clear the muddy waters as I jump into the sea, hosting Arctic glaciers and all kinds of wildlife I could only ever dream of meeting. The harshness of the cold hit me just as hard as the realization that things really can feel okay again after a storm, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself more deeply rooted, healthy, and strong when all the weather seems to pass and the skies become clear once again.